Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the Smackdown review. Smackdown tonight was from the Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And Smackdown tonight, I thought it was a very mid-show, in my opinion. Nothing happened on the show tonight. The show revolved around, Cody Rhodes and the Tribal Chief Roman Reigns meeting face-to-face. And everything else was just, in my opinion. But tonight we had Santos Escobar. He ended up taking on Rey Mysterio. This is Rey Mysterio's first match back after, he was taken out by Santos back in November. We also saw Austin Theory and Grayson Waller versus the OC, Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. This was a WrestleMania 40 Tag Team qualifying match. We had Iyo Sky end up taking on Naomi. And we had the Street Profits versus the Authors of Pain in a WrestleMania 40 Tag Team qualifying match, which that was the main event. But overall, SmackDown tonight, just a very mid-show it was. If you didn't watch the show tonight, you did not miss a thing. But I know I didn't do a Dynamite review on Wednesday. I was not feeling the greatest, but I still watched it. And I thought it was a very good show there in Toronto. We have Kazuchika Okada as the new Continental Champion. And also we have Adam Copeland as the new TNT Champion, where he ended up defeating Christian Cage. So very good show it was on Wednesday for Dynamite. But overall, let's jump right into the review. SmackDown opened up tonight with the very first match of the night. Rey Mysterio versus Santos Escobar. And this was, like I said, Rey Mysterio's first match, after, come back from injury after he was taken out by Santos in November. And I thought this was a very good match here. We had a match in the beginning. Rey ended up taking it to Escobar. Rey ended up whipping Escobar into the ropes, and he connected with a back elbow to Escobar. Mysterio then ended up clubbing Escobar and bounced him in the corner. Escobar ended up reversing a whip, and Rey ended up going for a springboard counter, and he ended up kicking Escobar into the corner. Escobar started begging Rey off, but Rey ended up applying a wrist lock to Escobar. Rey ended up trying to scale the ropes, but he lost his footing, and so he started to fight Escobar back, and Rey ended up coming off the top rope. He delivered a hurricanrana to Escobar. Rey then ended up kicking Escobar in the corner. He ended up hitting a sliding drop kick to Escobar's midsection, to which Rey then shouted at Escobar, LWO. So Rey ended up sliding under a big boot from Escobar, but Escobar ended up coming back with a back elbow to Rey. Escobar ended up stomping on Rey and ended up sending him into the ropes. And Escobar followed up with a basement drop kick. He ended up going for the cover, to which Rey ended up kicking out at one. Escobar ended up shoving Rey into the corner. Rey fought back, and he ended up hitting a head scissor takeover to send Escobar out of the ring. And Rey ended up hitting the ropes. He slid under the bottom rope to deliver a splash to Escobar, which that splash looked really good. So he ended up splashing Escobar at ringside. And then SmackDown went to commercial. Then when SmackDown came back from the commercial, Escobar was in control of the match. He ended up applying a surfboard stretch to Rey. Rey ended up fighting up, and he kicked out. And we had Escobar end up hitting Rey with a running double knees in the corner. Escobar then put Rey on the top rope. He charged at Rey, but Rey came back and booted Escobar back. He started then punching away at Escobar in the corner. Escobar quickly reversed the whip to the corner. Rey ended up hitting Stern first in the corner. So Escobar ended up putting Rey in the Tree of Woe. He backed up. Escobar then connected with a running kick to Rey. So Escobar ended up backing up to the opposite corner. He ended up charging, but Rey ended up sitting up, and Escobar went shoulder first into the ring post. Escobar then fell to the outside. Rey stood on top of the ring post, and he pinned a nice flying crossbody block out to the floor on Escobar. Rey ended up getting Escobar back to the ring, and he pinned a flying seated senton. And then Rey connected with a pair of clotheslines to Escobar. Escobar ended up going for a sunset flip, but Rey rolled through. He ended up pinning a basement drop kick to Escobar. Rey then connected with the lion salt, and he ended up going for the cover, to which Escobar ended up kicking out. Rey then knocked Escobar into the ropes, and he ended up going for the 619, but Escobar super kicked Rey down. Escobar then connected with a slinging facebuster, and he ended up going for the cover, to which Rey ended up kicking out. So Escobar then ended up shouting at Rey. He called Rey a pathetic old man. So Rey kicked Escobar in the head and knocked him out of the ring. Rey then bounced Escobar off the commentary table. Rey then ended up removing the cowl of the commentary table and hit Escobar with it. Rey then flied off the commentary table, knocked Escobar over the barricade and also into the timekeeper's area with a flying seated senton. So Rey ended up grabbing Escobar, bounced him off the commentary table again. He ended up sending Escobar into the ring post. Rey ended up getting Escobar in the ring and knocked him back. Rey ended up going for a springboard, but we saw this person in a Rey Mysterio mask, and he ended up grabbing Rey's ankle. So Rey looked all confused, and he stared at this person. Obviously, we all knew who the person was. So the person pulled off the mask, and of course, it was revealed to be Dominic. So Escobar then ended up hitting Rey with the 619, and he connected with the Phantom Driver. So he ended up going for the cover, and there you go. Santos Escobar ended up winning the match with thanks to help from Dominic Mysterio. So, of course, Rey was irate that, of course, his son cost him another match. But overall, I thought this was a decent match between Escobar and Rey Mysterio here. It's good to see Rey back. It's his, first match, back after being injured by Santos in November. And it looks like we might be getting back to, getting another rematch between Rey and his son, Dominic. So maybe we might see that at WrestleMania? Maybe. So, looks like WWE is going to be returned to that, between Rey and Dominic. And then we went backstage, and we saw Bayley. Bayley ended up thanking Naomi, who was also there, for helping her out last week. She ended up saying that it's hard for her to come by friends. Naomi ended up saying that she's happy to help Bayley, but her anger is directed at Iyo Sky. So Bianca Belair angrily came up to Bayley. Bianca ended up saying that Bayley isn't sorry for what she's done. She ended up saying that everything that is coming Bayley's way is something she deserves. So Bayley and Bianca started to argue with each other. Naomi ended up backing Bianca up, and Naomi was like, let's go that way. Let's talk that way. And so pretty much that was that. But could this be a sign, maybe, that WWE has a plan to turn, Bianca heel here? We'll have to wait and see. But obviously, Bianca was coming off as a heel here, with arguing with Bayley. And then, as SmackDown came back from the commercial, we saw Naomi and Bianca Belair. They walked by Cody Rhodes, to which Cody Rhodes was signing autographs. So Naomi ended up telling Bianca that her feelings are valid and that she has Bianca's back, but she doesn't back down. So pretty much that was basically that. And then we had Austin Theory and Grayson Waller versus the OC, Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows. The OC, they have been down in NXT. They've been used down there. And, of course, they were accompanied by Mia Yim here. This was a WrestleMania 40 tag team qualifying match. And this was just a meh matchup here. Obviously, we all knew who was going to win the match in the outcome. So the match ended up getting on the way. Austin Theory ended up getting in Luke Gallows' face. Gallows started punching Theory down. Carl Anderson ended up tagging in, and he kicked away at Theory. Anderson ended up chopping Theory and tagged Gallows back in. Gallows started punching Theory back and started punching away at him in the corner. Theory fought back with a thrust throat to Gallows, and then he tagged in Grayson Waller. Grayson Waller ended up coming in, and Gallows easily ended up punching Grayson Waller down. Gallows then tagged back in Carl Anderson. So it's back and forth, tags from the OC here, trying to keep Waller and Theory down. So Gallows ended up kicking Waller, and Carl Anderson ended up following up with a kick to knock Waller out of the ring. Gallows then ended up clotheslining Theory over the top rope. Carl Anderson then ended up wiping out Theory and Waller with a somersault senton. And then SmackDown went to commercial. Then when SmackDown came back from the commercial, Gallows ended up kicking Waller away, and he ended up delivering a super kick to Waller. Theory ended up quickly tagging in. Gallows ended up hitting Theory with a choke slam. So we had Mia Yim on the outside. She ended up hitting Waller with an arm drag on the floor before Waller could attack Carl Anderson. So the ref, didn't even see that. So Carl Anderson ended up tagging in. He ended up going at it on Theory. Anderson ended up knocking Waller off the apron. Anderson ended up hitting a flipping neck breaker on Theory. And then he ended up hitting a double-A spine buster. To which Waller ended up getting the same from Anderson. So Anderson ended up coming off the second rope with a flying neck breaker on Theory. He ended up going for the cover, to which Theory ended up kicking out. Gallows tagged back in, and both Gallows and Anderson, they were sent up to deliver the Magic Killer on Theory, but Waller ended up breaking that up. Waller then ended up punching Anderson out of the ring. Gallows sent Waller over the top rope. Theory rolled Gallows up, and he put his feet on the ropes. And all we saw was Grayson Waller end up holding Theory's feet down to get the win. So there you go. Austin Theory and Grayson Waller ended up winning the match. So Austin Theory and Grayson Waller will take on the winners of the Street Profits versus the Authors of Pain, which that match, was featured later on night. They will face them next week on SmackDown. So overall, I thought it was a very meh match. Obviously, we all knew who the winners were going to be coming out of this match. You think they would give it to the OC? No. And then we had Naomi versus Iyo Sky. And this was a meh matchup here. So we had Iyo Sky's music end up playing. Naomi already made her way out. And the Kabuki Warriors, Asuka and Kairi Sane, came out. And Dakota Kai also came out. Iyo Sky was nowhere to be seen. So cut to backstage, and we saw Iyo Sky attacking Bayley. And referees and officials had to come there and break it up. Iyo Sky then head out to the ring. And of course, Iyo Sky attacking Bayley, of course, her WrestleMania opponent. But Iyo Sky ended up making her way out. The bell ended up ringing. Naomi ended up taking it to Iyo Sky. Naomi ended up shouldering and kicking Iyo Sky in the corner. And Naomi ended up choking Iyo Sky with a boot. Iyo Sky ended up fighting back, started punching Naomi back. Naomi ended up reversing the whip to the corner, but Iyo Sky ended up booting Naomi back. Iyo Sky ended up coming flying off the ropes with a hurricanrana, and she connected with a run drop kick in the corner to Naomi. Iyo Sky then dug her knee into Naomi's face. She started choking Naomi on the ropes. Iyo Sky ended up booting Naomi in the face. She then ended up sending Naomi into the corner, but Naomi springboarded off the ropes with a kick to Iyo's skull. Naomi then delivered a running drop kick, and then Naomi connected with a bulldog to Iyo Sky. She ended up going for the cover, and Iyo Sky ended up kicking out. So SmackDown went to commercial. Then when SmackDown came back from the commercial, Naomi was in control of the match. She ended up kicking Iyo Sky in the head and snapped Iyo off the ropes. Naomi ended up driving Iyo face head first into the turnbuckles, ended up hitting a flying crossbody block. Naomi then ended up hitting a running drop kick in the corner, and she ended up hitting a snap kick to Iyo. Naomi ended up hitting a split-legged splash to Iyo. She ended up going for the coverage, which Iyo ended up kicking out. You had Iyo Sky ended up fighting back. She ended up hitting a missile drop kick to knock Naomi back. Iyo then ended up hitting a running Meteora into the bottom turnbuckle. She then ended up going to the top rope, but Naomi ended up cutting her off, and Naomi ended up hitting a superplex off the middle rope to Iyo. She ended up going for the cover, and Iyo ended up kicking out. So Iyo and Naomi slowly ended up getting back up. They were exchanging blows. Naomi ended up forearming Iyo, but Iyo ended up rolling Naomi down. She ended up hitting a double stomp to Naomi's midsection. Naomi soon ended up getting Iyo on the apron, and she ended up hitting a head scissor DDT. So the Kabuki Warriors, Asuka and Kairi Sane, ended up running down to distract Naomi. Iyo then ended up taking Naomi out, ended up hitting a over the moonsault onto Naomi. She ended up going for the cover, and there you go. Iyo Sky ended up winning the match. Post-match, all Damage Control were in the ring, and there was a 4-on-1, beat down on Naomi. Naomi ended up trying to fight off Damage Control, and Asuka ended up spraying Naomi with the poison mist in her face. Bianca ended up running down to make the save. Bianca ended up sending Dakota into the ring steps, and she ended up taking out everyone in the ring. She took out Asuka, Kairi Sane, and Iyo Sky, but Kairi Sane ended up grabbing Bianca's braid, but Bianca ended up taking Kairi Sane out with a Grand Slam. Bianca ended up going for the KOD on Kairi Sane, but Dakota Kai chop blocked Bianca's knee. So Iyo then ended up drop kicking Bianca in the head. We had the crowd end up chanting for Bayley to come out to also make the save, but Bayley didn't come out because, of course, she was attacked earlier by Iyo. So pretty much that was that. But overall, I thought this was a very meh matchup here. It looks like we might get Bianca and Naomi team up to take on the Kabuki Warriors at WrestleMania for the Women's Tag Team Championship. So it looks like that's possibly going to happen maybe at WrestleMania. And then we had a vignette on Jade Cargill. And Jade Cargill ended up saying that she is coming to SmackDown and will make her first appearance next week on SmackDown. So Jade Cargill is going to be making her first appearance on SmackDown next week. And then as SmackDown came back from the commercial, of course, we got the Bray Wyatt documentary trailer shown, which will be on Peacock on April 1st, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think this documentary on Bray Wyatt is going to be really good. And, of course, after the trailer was played, great trailer, by the way, it was lit up with fireflies in honor of Bray Wyatt. So we all miss Bray Wyatt. May he rest in peace. So then we went to Bianca Belair. And Bianca was helping Naomi. She poured the water over Naomi's eyes to, help her from the poison mist that was spit out to her by Asuka. Tiffany Stratton, Tiffy time, ended up coming over, and she kept making fun of both Bianca and Naomi. And she kept saying, "Toodles." And pretty much that was that. And then we went to Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens was with Nick Aldis. Apparently, Nick Aldis, is injured. He sustained an injury, from what I heard. But, fortunately, he was on SmackDown tonight. So, Kevin Owens was talking about Logan Paul, the United States champion. So, Pretty Deadly, Pretty Awful walked in. So, Pretty Awful ended up saying that Kevin Owens knows nothing about tag team wrestling. But Owens was like, "Oh, I don't know anything about tag team wrestling. I won the tag titles in the main event of WrestleMania last year." So, Pretty Awful were like to Kevin Owens, "Oh, that's in the past." But Kevin Owens ended up saying that he will be the future. So Kevin Owens ended up challenging Pretty Awful to a match next week with a partner, which his partner was revealed to be Randy Orton. So Orton ended up appearing next to Elton Prince. He scared Elton Prince. Owens and Orton ended up walking off. Kevin Owens ended up returning to knock out both Pretty Awful with one punch. And pretty much that was basically that. So next week it's going to be Kevin Owens and Randy Orton versus Pretty Awful. And then we saw a video that happened last night where LA Knight, he ended up going to AJ Styles' house. So he had a home invasion angle. And the cops were there. And Styles and Knight ended up going at it. Knight was arrested for, showing up to Styles' home. And Styles ended up dropping all charges. And Knight was released. So, we ended up seeing that. But really like when they do these home invasion angles, in pro wrestling. I just find them very interesting. So we end up seeing that. And then we have the Street Profits versus the Authors of Pain. And this was a WrestleMania 40 tag team qualifying match. Of course, the Profits, Dawkins, Montez Ford, Authors of Pain, Akam and Razor. And it was a decent match here. So we had Akam and Razor, the Authors of Pain, end up overwhelming Angelo Dawkins with some strikes and some quick tags. We had Paul Ellering out there, which Paul Ellering was shouting instructions to both Akam and Razor from ringside. Akam ended up attacking Dawkins, and then he tagged Razor in. Razor ended up punching Dawkins, and he ended up kneeing Dawkins back. He ended up going for a whip, but Dawkins ended up holding the ropes. Razor ended up sending Dawkins into the ropes, but Dawkins ended up holding on and booted Razor back. Ford ended up tagging in, and both AOP were sent out of the ring by the Profits. Ford ended up going for a somersault senton, but both of the Authors of Pain, Akam and Razor, ended up catching Ford. And they ended up powerbombing Ford into Dawkins at ringside, which was crazy. So then SmackDown went to commercial. Then when SmackDown came back from the commercial, Razor was punching away at Montez Ford. Razor ended up whipping Ford hard into his corner and knocked Dawkins off the apron. Dawkins then tried to get into the ring, but the ref ended up holding Dawkins back. And that led to the Authors of Pain taking advantage of the distraction and ended up doing some double team attacks on Ford. Akam ended up tagging in and he ended up kicking Ford down. Razor ended up tagging back in. He ended up dropping an elbow to Ford. So Ford ended up flipping through a back suplex and he ended up hitting a step up enziguri to Razor. So Razor ended up standing. He ended up stopping Ford from making a tag to Dawkins. Ford eventually ended up getting away and made the tag to Dawkins. Akam ended up taking it as well. So Akam and also Dawkins ended up going at it. Dawkins ended up going at it on Akam. He ended up knocking Razor off the apron. Dawkins ended up hitting a corkscrew elbow on Akam. He ended up going to the outside and he delivered a shoulder tackle to Razor at ringside. Dawkins ended up getting back into the ring and he ended up hitting Akam with the silencer. Dawkins then avalanched him and ended up hitting an enziguri to Akam. Dawkins then got Akam on his shoulders, but Akam ended up getting down. Ford then tagged in, but Akam ended up taking Ford out. Razor then tagged in, and the Authors of Pain ended up hitting the final chapter on Ford. And so Razor ended up going for the cover. Dawkins broke up the pin. The Authors of Pain ended up going for a double team to Dawkins, but Dawkins ended up breaking it up. Ford then ended up cradling Akam, and so Ford ended up going for the cover. And there you go. The Street Profits ended up winning the match. So the Profits will be facing Grayson Waller and Austin Theory next week on SmackDown. But was not a fan of AOP losing this match. But overall, decent match it was. And then, as SmackDown came back from the commercial, they announced what we're going to see next week on SmackDown. We're going to see Bianca Belair facing Dakota Kai. Of course, the Street Profits will face Grayson Waller and Austin Theory. The New Catch Republic, this is Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne. They end up facing Legado del Fantasma, Humberto and Angel. Kevin Owens and Randy Orton will take on Pretty Awful. And Jade Cargill will make her SmackDown debut. So SmackDown next week is looking like a stacked show. Hopefully, it'll be a decent show next week than the show that we got tonight. And now we have Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes going face to face. Roman Reigns ended up stepping out of a SUV in the parking garage. He walked up to his wise man, Paul Heyman. And they ended up making their way into the arena. So Roman ended up making his entrance alongside Paul Heyman. And of course, Reigns ended up taking his time to get into the ring. We had a Cody chant end up firing up, from the crowd there. Reigns started pacing the ring. He looked at the crowd in Milwaukee. Paul Heyman ended up embracing, Roman Reigns. So Roman ended up getting on the mic. He ended up saying that the wise man made a promise and that he ended up keeping his word. Roman kept his word. Reigns ended up saying that he is a man of his word and he is here alone. He ended up saying there is no bloodline other than the wise man, but he is no physical threat. So Roman ended up saying that it's time for Cody to acknowledge him. So we saw Cody Rhodes walking backstage on the Titantron. The crowd ended up, popping for Cody there. And so SmackDown went to commercial. Then when SmackDown came back from the commercial, Cody Rhodes ended up making his way out. Got a massive pop from the Milwaukee crowd. Everybody going, whoa! We got 2 woes tonight. Of course, we got the pyro for Cody's entrance going off after the second woe. So Reigns ended up saying that he kept his word and is here by himself. He ended up saying, how about Cody? Cody ended up getting on the mic. He ended up saying that Reigns is as much a man of his word as he is. He ended up saying that if Reigns came alone, so did him. So Reigns then looked at Paul Heyman. He ended up saying that Cody is a fool and that Cody is stupid to him. He ended up saying that Cody is not fit to be on top and the face of this company because he's an idiot. Reigns ended up saying that no one cares about Cody doing the right thing and that Cody needs to start thinking with his head. He ended up saying that in the past month, Cody has aligned himself with his little brother, Seth Rollins. And on Monday on Raw, Cody was in a jam. He ended up saying, where was Rollins? Was he in traffic? Plane delay? Snow? He ended up saying that it seems like Seth showed his true colors. So Reigns scoffed at Rollins, saying he would be Cody's true Shield. So Reigns ended up saying that he was in the Shield with Seth, and that they didn't do good guy things, but they were brothers. Really like that. Reigns ended up, talking a little bit about the Shield here, and Rollins was a part of the Shield. So Reigns ended up saying, then Rollins stabbed him in his back. Of course, Roman mentioned, Rollins stabbing him, when Rollins ended up, hitting the chair to Reigns' back. So Reigns ended up saying that's why Cody is a fool. So Cody ended up saying that he remembers the Shield and that they were unstoppable and undefeated. He ended up saying, does Reigns remember the first team that beat the Shield? He ended up saying, here's a hint. The last name was Rhodes. Rhodes ended up saying that he appreciates this education and venom-laced wisdom that Reigns is dropping. Rhodes ended up pointing out that he has bullet cufflinks on, so he's not unfamiliar with factions and betrayals while he was off doing something else. So Cody ended up asking if he can trust Seth Rollins. Cody then asked the crowd. The crowd ended up cheering for that. So Cody ended up saying that Rollins might hate his guts and that Reigns might be right. Cody ended up saying that he knows one thing, that he hates Reigns even more. So Cody ended up saying that he will see Reigns' situation and raise Reigns another. And, he was like, Cody ended up saying that they're all slightly confused because Cody was like, can Reigns trust his partner at WrestleMania? Can Reigns trust his cousin, The Rock? He ended up saying that in the pantheon that is the bloodline, who is really in charge? Is it the tribal chief or the final boss, The Rock? So Reigns was like, oh, that's old. He was like, is that all you got, Cody? He ended up saying that was spoken and spun, like a true politician. So Reigns sarcastically offered to have Cody kiss some babies in the crowd. So Reigns was like, Cody promises things, but doesn't keep them. And he ended up saying that Cody told the people lies, but they never come to fruition. He ended up saying that Cody is number 2, and anyone would be lucky to be number 2. He ended up saying that Cody is the greatest number 2 of all time, and that he is number 1. Reigns is number 1 forever. So Cody ended up thinking about what Reigns just said. He ended up saying that Reigns grew up in this industry, like he did. And Reigns probably looked in the mirror and wanted to be the next face of a generation. So Cody ended up mentioning, Bruno Sammartino, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, John Cena. So Cody ended up saying that he's consented that to Reigns, and many kids will grow up wanting to be the next Roman Reigns. He ended up saying that is his destiny, but Reigns is unfamiliar with Cody. So Cody ended up saying that when it comes to WrestleMania and who defeats him for the title he's held for so long, Cody ended up saying that he isn't number 2. He's the 1. So Cody ended up wishing Reigns luck at WrestleMania. He extended his hand for Reigns to shake. So Reigns declined to shake Cody's hand. He backed up. Reigns and Paul Heyman ended up walking off. Reigns turned and snapped his fingers, and then he smiled at Cody. So Sikoa and Jimmy Uso made their way through the crowd. Of course, this was a setup here by, Roman Reigns. So Sikoa and Jimmy end up slowly approaching Cody. Cody was preparing to fight, Sikoa and Jimmy. And then Jey Uso and Seth Rollins came through the crowd. So they ended up standing in front of the ring and they laughed at the Bloodline. So these guys didn't go at it. They just declined to attack, Seth Rollins and Jey Uso. And that was how SmackDown went off the air. Overall, I thought this was a good segment, but really it did nothing to hype us, going into WrestleMania here. At the end right here, I was expecting a little bit more from them. I mean, it was a good segment, but was expecting more. That was SmackDown tonight. Overall, mid-show it was. But anyways, that's it for the SmackDown review. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all later.